Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Frank. After 3 years of being in a relationship, I got down on one knee, with a ring, the speech, and everything planned perfectly. She said no. That same night, she posted on Instagram, "Know your worth, queens. Don't settle for less." I liked it. Then I commented, "Kings too." Everything changed 9 months later. Let me take you back to where it all began. Rita and I met during our last year of college at a mutual friend's birthday party. She was studying marketing, I was finishing up my degree in finance, and we just clicked immediately. We had this easy chemistry where conversations flowed naturally. Within 2 months, we were officially dating, and by graduation, we decided to move to the same city and get an apartment together. Those first 2 years were honestly great. We settled into this comfortable routine where I'd leave for my job each morning, and she'd head out to her position at a digital marketing agency about an hour later. Evenings were spent cooking dinner together, binge-watching Netflix series, and planning weekend adventures. We celebrated our first anniversary with a weekend getaway to the mountains, our second with a fancy dinner at the steakhouse, where we had our first official date. Rita seemed genuinely happy during this period. She'd send me random texts throughout the day and surprise me with my favorite coffee on particularly stressful workdays. Her Instagram was filled with a couple of photos of us doing things. The comments were always supportive from friends and family, with her mom frequently leaving heart emojis and telling us how cute we looked together. But somewhere around year 3, things began changing in ways that were subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. Rita began working later hours, claiming new client projects required her immediate attention. Weekend plans became more flexible on her end, with her frequently canceling our scheduled activities because something urgent came up at work. The texts throughout the day became less frequent, and when we did communicate, her responses felt more obligatory than genuine. I noticed she started going out more often with her coworkers, particularly on Friday nights when we used to have our standing date nights. When I'd suggest joining these work gatherings, she'd explain they were just boring industry networking events that wouldn't interest me. Her social media presence shifted, too. She was posting more individual shots of herself at coffee shops, restaurants, or professional events. The captions became more focused on personal growth, career advancement, and independence. Despite these changes, I was more certain than ever that Rita was the person I wanted to spend my life with. It might be because I interpreted her growing independence as maturity, or I was just deeply in love and couldn't imagine being with anyone else. I started researching engagement rings in February, spending my lunch breaks at jewelry stores and learning about cut, clarity, and carat weights. I wanted everything to be perfect. By April, I had selected a classic solitaire diamond ring with a platinum band, nothing too flashy, but definitely elegant and timeless. I spent weeks planning the perfect proposal location, ultimately deciding on the venue to propose. The weather was supposed to be perfect on that Saturday afternoon, and I had even arranged for her friend Laura to suggest bringing her to the venue, not knowing I'd be waiting with the ring. That Saturday morning, I was incredibly nervous, but excited. I had the ring in my jacket pocket and had practiced my speech probably 50 times in the mirror. When Rita arrived at the venue where I had planned to propose, I gave them time to settle down before I appeared from behind her. I got down on one knee and pulled out the ring. When she turned to see me, I told her how much she meant to me, how I couldn't imagine my future without her, and asked if she would marry me. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever, but it was probably only about 10 seconds. Rita looked genuinely shocked, like someone had just told her some unexpected bad news. She helped me stand up and took my hands, then explained that she wasn't ready for marriage. She said she was still figuring out her career path and wanted to focus on personal growth. She mentioned feeling like she needed more time to discover who she was as an individual before making such a big commitment. Rita assured me it wasn't about not loving me, but rather about timing and her own readiness for that level of commitment. I was devastated, obviously, but I tried to understand her perspective. I walked back to our apartment in relative silence, carrying the ring box in my pocket like some sort of painful reminder of the afternoon's events. That evening, Rita went to her friend Laura's house to talk through the situation, leaving me alone to process the rejection and figure out where our relationship stood. While she was gone, I scrolled through social media, trying to distract myself from replaying the proposal scene over and over in my head. Around 9 that evening, Rita posted on her Instagram story and feed simultaneously. The post was a simple text graphic with a pink and gold background that read, "Know your worth, queens. Don't settle for less." The caption was just a crown emoji and the hashtags #self-love and #knowyourworth. I stared at that post for probably 5 full minutes, feeling a mixture of hurt, confusion, and honestly, a bit of anger. Here was my girlfriend of 3 years, who had just rejected my marriage proposal a few hours earlier, posting about not settling for less. The implication seemed pretty clear, and it stung more than the actual rejection had. In a moment of petty impulse, I liked the post and added a comment that simply said, "Kings too." Looking back, that comment was probably passive-aggressive and immature, but in that moment, it felt like the only way to respond without getting into a public social media argument. The comment got several likes from mutual friends, which somehow made me feel slightly vindicated, though I realized later that most people probably had no idea about the context behind my response. Rita came home around 11 that night, saying she was tired and wanted to go to bed. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened, making coffee and asking about my plans for the day, as if everything was normal. I decided not to bring up either the proposal or the social media post, figuring we both needed some space to process everything. Over the next days, our living situation became increasingly awkward. We were polite to each other, but lacked the easy intimacy that had characterized our relationship for 3 years. Rita continued working late and going out with coworkers, while I spent most evenings at the gym or visiting friends. Neither of us brought up the future of our relationship directly, but the elephant in the room was getting impossible to ignore. About a week after the failed proposal, Rita suggested we should take a break to figure out what we both wanted. She framed it as a temporary space for reflection, but something in her tone suggested she had already made up her mind about our relationship's future. I agreed, partially because I was exhausted from the tension and partially because I hoped some time apart might help her realize what we had together. Rita moved back in with Laura temporarily, while we figured out the logistics of our shared apartment and belongings. The lease was in both our names until August, so we agreed she would continue paying her half of the rent while staying elsewhere. Dividing up our shared possessions was surprisingly complicated, given how intertwined our lives had become over 3 years together. During this separation period, I focused on work and tried to reconnect with friends I had somewhat neglected during the relationship. My coworkers Kevin and Tyler started including me in their weekly happy hour gatherings, and I began going to the gym more consistently. The routine helped distract from the constant wondering about what Rita was doing and whether she was missing our relationship at all. About a month into our break, another friend of Rita, Jessica, reached out to me via text message. She said she wanted to check in and see how I was handling everything. Jessica had always been friendly when we hung out in groups, but we had never really communicated one-on-one before. Her message seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being rather than fishing for information about my feelings regarding Rita. It took several conversations over the next few weeks before Jessica finally revealed something that completely changed my understanding of why Rita had rejected my proposal. She seemed conflicted about sharing this information, but eventually told me that Rita had been secretly involved with another guy for months before I proposed. The new guy worked in software sales and had apparently met Rita through a mutual connection on LinkedIn. According to Rita's friend, Rita and the new guy's connection was done secretly. I suspected it was under the pretense of work-related activities that Rita gave as an excuse. The new guy knew Rita was in a committed relationship, but seemed to enjoy the secretive nature of their connection. Rita had been hiding this entire emotional affair from me while simultaneously pulling away from our relationship. The most painful part of Jessica's revelation was learning that Rita had been comparing me to the new guy when she talks to her friends. Rita saw the new guy as more successful financially, more exciting professionally, and representing the lifestyle she thought she wanted. Rita had convinced herself that staying with me meant settling for less than she deserved, while the new guy represented everything she thought was missing. Jessica apologized for keeping this secret, explaining that she had hoped Rita would end things with the new guy and recommit to our relationship. Instead, Rita had been using our relationship break as a cover to explore her connection with the new guy more openly. She was essentially keeping me as a safety net while pursuing what she considered an upgrade. Learning this information was devastating but also clarifying. I finally understood why Rita had seemed so distant in those final months of our relationship, and why her rejection of my proposal had felt so definitive. She hadn't been questioning her readiness for marriage in general. She had been questioning her readiness for marriage specifically with me. Over the next couple of months, I heard periodic updates through mutual friends about Rita's situation with the new guy. Apparently, she had been pushing for them to make their relationship official, but he was resistant to any kind of commitment. He seemed to enjoy their casual arrangement and wasn't interested in the serious relationship Rita was hoping for. Rita's social media during this period told an interesting story. Her posts became increasingly focused on independence and self-worth, but there was an underlying desperation that seemed obvious to anyone paying attention. She would post quotes about not chasing people who don't appreciate you, immediately followed by photos from expensive restaurants that I knew she couldn't afford on her salary alone. By month 4 of our separation, I heard from a mutual friend that Rita and her man's situation had become pretty toxic. He would make plans with Rita and then cancel last minute, or he would go days without responding to her messages. Rita was apparently driving herself crazy trying to figure out what she was doing wrong and how she could convince him to take their relationship more seriously. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rita had rejected my proposal because she thought she deserved better, but the person she considered an upgrade was treating her far worse than I ever had. While she was dealing with her man's inconsistency and emotional unavailability, I was moving forward with my own healing and growth. Meanwhile, Jessica had been checking in with me regularly throughout this entire period. What started as a concerned friendship had developed into something deeper. We discovered we had shared interests that I had never realized during group settings when Rita and I were together. Jessica and I started spending time together, initially just as friends, dealing with the complicated social dynamics of Rita's choices. These interactions gave me something positive to focus on while processing the end of my relationship. Jessica was a thoughtful listener and offered perspective without ever trying to manipulate my feelings about Rita or the situation. Around month 6 of my separation from Rita, I learned that her relationship with her new man had completely fallen apart. According to mutual friends, Rita had been pushing to make their relationship official and exclusive, but he had been resistant to any commitment. The same pattern that had made their secret relationship exciting apparently made him unwilling to settle down with her. Rita had given him an ultimatum about becoming exclusive and public with their relationship, and he had responded by ending things entirely. She was devastated, having given up our stable relationship for someone who ultimately didn't want the same level of commitment she was seeking. During this same period, Jessica and I had been growing closer, and I was beginning to realize my feelings for her were developing beyond friendship. She seemed to value qualities in me that Rita had started taking for granted in our final year together. One evening around month 7, while we were having dinner after an event, Jessica confessed that she had always felt something special for me, even when Rita and I were together. She said she had never acted on those feelings out of loyalty to her friendship with Rita, but she wanted me to know how much she genuinely cared about me as a person. This confession created a complex situation. I was definitely developing strong feelings for Jessica and could see real potential for a meaningful relationship. However, dating my ex-girlfriend's friend felt complicated ethically, especially given how recent my breakup with Rita had been. Jessica and I talked extensively about the potential social complications and decided to proceed carefully and honestly. By month 8, Rita and I had finalized our separation completely. We had handled all shared belongings and lease arrangements, and we had essentially eliminated contact except when absolutely necessary. Rita seemed to be struggling with the aftermath of her situation with her man while trying to rebuild her social life and professional focus. Jessica and I had our first official date that month. The evening felt completely natural and comfortable. With Jessica, I felt like she was genuinely interested in understanding who I was rather than just enjoying the excitement of a new relationship. Over the following month, Jessica and I continued developing our relationship while being discreetly respectful of the complex social dynamics involved. We avoided posting anything on social media and generally kept our relationship private until we were more confident about our long-term compatibility and direction. What struck me most about being with Jessica was how fundamentally different it felt from my relationship with Rita. After a year and some months of separation from Rita, I was completely certain that Jessica was the person I wanted to build a future with. She had shown me what it meant to be with someone who truly valued and appreciated what I brought to a partnership. The contrast with Rita was profound, and I realized I had been accepting much less than I deserved in my previous relationship. I started planning a proposal for Jessica, this time with complete confidence about both my feelings and her likely response. I chose a location that held meaning for our specific relationship. The proposal went perfectly. Jessica was surprised but immediately thrilled, saying yes without any hesitation or need for reflection. We spent that evening talking about our future together and celebrating the beginning of our engagement. The entire experience felt natural and joyful, completely different from the uncertainty and rejection I had experienced with Rita. We announced our engagement on social media that evening with a simple photo of us together and the ring, along with a caption that read, "Excited to start this next chapter with my best friend and the love of my life." The response from friends and family was immediately positive and supportive, with everyone who knew us commenting on how happy we seemed together. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly news of our engagement would reach Rita or how intensely she would react to it. Jessica and I had mutual friends with Rita, so it was inevitable that she would see the announcement relatively quickly. However, I wasn't prepared for the immediate and emotional response that followed. That night, around 11:47 p.m., my phone rang with a call from Rita's number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Rita was clearly crying and sounded like she had been drinking. She immediately launched into this emotional monologue about seeing my engagement announcement and how shocked she was that I had moved on so quickly and with her friend. Rita told me she had been expecting me to reach out. She said she thought I would eventually come back and try to win her back, proving that our relationship meant as much to me as it had meant to her. She admitted that part of her rejection of my proposal had been based on wanting me to fight harder for our relationship. This confession was honestly stunning to me. Rita had apparently been operating under the assumption that rejecting my proposal would somehow make me more determined to prove my love and commitment to her. She had expected grand gestures, persistent pursuit, and basically me chasing after her to prove that I valued our relationship enough to fight for it. Instead, I had respected her decision, given her the space she requested, and moved forward with my own life. Rita seemed genuinely confused that I had taken her rejection at face value rather than interpreting it as some kind of test or challenge to overcome. During this phone call, Rita also expressed regret about the new guy she ended up with. She admitted that he had never valued her the way I had, and she realized she had made a mistake in thinking he was better for her. Rita said she had been hoping we might reconnect once she worked through her issues and figured out what she really wanted. I listened to everything Rita had to say, but my response was calm and definitive. I explained that I was genuinely happy with Jessica and that our relationship had helped me understand what I truly wanted in a partner. I told Rita I wished her well, but that I had moved forward and wasn't interested in revisiting our past relationship. Rita seemed shocked that I wasn't willing to consider giving our relationship another try. She asked if my engagement to her friend was somehow meant to make her jealous or get her attention. When I assured her that my proposal had been entirely about my genuine feelings for her friend and our future together, Rita became even more upset. The call ended with Rita saying she needed time to process everything and asking if we could talk again in a few days. I politely declined, explaining that I thought it would be better for both of us to respect the boundaries of my new relationship and her need to move forward independently. After hanging up, I immediately told Jessica about Rita's call. She was understanding and supportive, though understandably concerned about potential ongoing drama. Jessica said she had been wondering if something like this might happen once Rita learned about our engagement, and she appreciated my complete honesty about the entire conversation. Over the next few weeks, Rita made several attempts to contact me through various channels, and even tried to reach me through mutual friends. Her messages alternated between apologetic, angry, and desperate, but they all centered around her regret about how things had ended between us and her belief that we should reconsider our relationship. I responded once to her initial follow-up message, politely but firmly explaining that I was committed to my relationship with Jessica and asking Rita to respect that boundary. When the contact attempts continued despite my clear communication, I made the decision to block Rita's number and social media accounts. Jessica and I agreed this was the healthiest approach for everyone involved, including Rita herself. Looking back now, 18 months after Rita's initial rejection of my proposal, I can see this entire experience with remarkable clarity. Rita's Know Your Worth Queens, Don't Settle for Less post has become something of a private irony that Jessica and I occasionally reference, though never in a malicious way toward Rita. The irony of that social media message, given everything that followed, is almost too perfect to believe. Rita thought she was avoiding settling by rejecting my proposal and pursuing another guy, when in reality, she was the one who ended up settling for someone who didn't value her commitment or consistency. Meanwhile, I learned what it actually meant to know my worth by recognizing when someone was taking me for granted and being open to finding a partner who genuinely appreciated what I offered. The contrast between my relationships with Rita and Jessica has been educational in ways I never could have anticipated. With Rita, I spent increasing amounts of energy trying to prove my value and convince her that our relationship deserved her full attention and commitment. With Jessica, I feel valued and appreciated naturally, and our relationship continues growing stronger because we both actively choose to invest in it every day. Jessica and I are planning our wedding, and the entire process has been collaborative and genuinely enjoyable. We make decisions together, respect each other's perspectives, and share the same vision for building our future together. The difference between proposing to someone who sees you as one option among many versus someone who sees you as their definitive choice is profound and life-changing. I occasionally wonder how Rita is doing, but I don't seek out information about her life. The lessons I learned from this entire situation have made me a better partner and a more confident person. I learned the importance of recognizing my own worth and not accepting behavior that made me feel undervalued. I learned that real love involves choosing each other consistently, not keeping options open while testing other possibilities. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most important growth. If Rita had accepted my proposal, I would never have discovered what it felt like to be with someone who truly wanted to be with me. If she hadn't posted that social media message about knowing her worth, I might not have been forced to examine whether I was really living by those same principles. For anyone watching who might be in a similar situation, my advice would be to take people at their word when they show you how they feel about you. If someone rejects your commitment or treats your relationship as optional, believe them. Don't waste time trying to convince someone to value what you're offering. Know your worth, but make sure you understand what that actually means. It doesn't mean thinking you deserve better than what you have without appreciating its value. It means recognizing when you're genuinely being undervalued and having the courage to seek something healthier. Sometimes the best response to rejection is success. Not success designed to make your ex jealous or prove a point, but genuine success in finding happiness and building the life you actually want. My engagement wasn't a rebound, even though it happened fast. It was the natural result of finding someone who valued what I had to offer. The irony of Rita's social media post will probably always make me smile, but not because I take pleasure in how things worked out for her. It makes me smile because it reminds me how much I learned about myself and what I really wanted in a partner. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor about teaching us lessons we didn't know we needed to learn. Sometimes the most important love stories begin with someone else's rejection. And sometimes the most valuable lessons about self-worth come disguised as painful social media posts that initially seemed designed to hurt us. Thank you for watching.